There is no clear boundary where the inhabited world ends and the wild begins. Roads thin out quietly. Towns reduce to clusters of buildings, then to fuel depots, then to nothing at all. Beyond that point, the land remains as it has for thousands of years. Broad river valleys cut through frozen ground. Mountain ranges stretch without markers or names that matter on the ground. Forests of spruce and birch fill the lowlands, dense enough to block wind, open enough to hide movement. In winter, snow erases detail. In summer, light refuses to leave. This is the largest state in the United States, larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Much of it is unreachable by road. Entire regions depend on small aircraft, river travel, or weeks of walking. Weather systems move freely across it. Cold air from the Arctic meets moisture from the Pacific. Storms form quickly and without concern for schedules or preparation. Silence defines much of the interior. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of human noise. Wind moves through trees. Ice shifts beneath rivers. Birds call briefly, then stop. In winter, even these sounds are reduced. Snow absorbs movement. The landscape feels paused. The ground itself is unreliable. Permafrost holds the soil in place, then releases it when temperatures change. Rivers alter course from one year to the next. Trails vanish. What was solid becomes wet. What was open becomes blocked. Maps lose accuracy quickly. Life exists here under strict conditions. Plants grow fast and die back completely. Animals follow cycles shaped by temperature and daylight. There is no excess. Energy is conserved. Movement is deliberate. Survival is not dramatic. It is methodical. Predators live within these systems. Brown bears, black bears, wolves, and wolverines occupy wide territories. They are not constantly visible, but their presence is consistent. They move with knowledge of the land that humans never fully gain. Encounters are rare, but proximity is constant. This environment does not react to fear or confidence. It does not respond to experience alone. Mistakes are not punished immediately, but they are remembered by the terrain. A wrong decision may remain unnoticed for days, then become final. For centuries, people have entered this place for work, for travel, for exploration, or for isolation. Some arrived with preparation, others with optimism. Many underestimated the scale of distance and the speed at which conditions change. Before anything goes wrong, Alaska appears calm, stable, almost welcoming in its stillness. The danger is not hidden. It simply does not announce itself. This is the land where survival has never been accidental. Alaska does not become dangerous suddenly. It becomes difficult gradually. The climate shapes every decision long before a person arrives. Temperatures alone do not explain it. It is the duration. Winter holds the land for most of the year. In the northern regions, snow can remain on the ground for 8 months. Rivers freeze solid, then thaw unevenly. Ice forms layers that appear stable from above and hollow beneath. Movement across them requires experience, patience, and restraint. Darkness is a defining factor. Above the Arctic Circle, the sun disappears entirely for weeks at a time in winter. In summer, it does not set. This alters sleep, judgment, and routine. Time loses familiar structure. Fatigue accumulates quietly. Mistakes become easier to make. Wind lowers the effective temperature far beyond what thermometers record. Frostbite can begin within minutes on exposed skin. Hypothermia does not require extreme cold. Wet clothing, mild wind, and exhaustion are enough. The body loses heat faster than it can produce it. Early symptoms are subtle. Coordination declines. Decisions slow. By the time danger is recognized, options are limited. Snowfall varies widely. In the interior, snow is dry and light, easy to move through but deep enough to trap movement. Along the coast, snow is heavy and wet, collapses structures and freezes into ice. Avalanches are common in mountainous regions, often triggered naturally, without warning. Summer brings its own complications. Melting snow swells rivers beyond their banks. Water that was crossable in winter becomes impossible to ford. Insects dominate the air. Mosquitoes and black flies interfere with visibility and focus. Dehydration becomes more likely as effort increases. Vegetation offers limited assistance. Berries appear briefly and unpredictably. Edible plants require precise identification. Errors can be serious. Trees provide shelter and fuel, but cutting them demands time and energy. Firewood must be dried, even when everything is wet. Animals follow seasonal patterns that do not align with human plans. Moose move through river corridors. Bears follow salmon runs. Wolves cover vast distances daily. These animals do not seek confrontation, but they do not avoid humans deliberately. Encounters occur when paths overlap. Predators are apex not because they are aggressive, but because they are efficient. They conserve energy. They observe. They retreat when unnecessary risk appears. Humans, unfamiliar with these cues, often misinterpret behavior. Panic creates noise. Noise attracts attention. There is no central authority in much of Alaska's wilderness. No patrols. No immediate response. Search and rescue operations exist, but they are limited by weather, daylight, and distance. Aircraft cannot fly in all conditions. Ground teams move slowly. The land does not adjust to experience or intention. Skill reduces risk, but it does not remove it. Equipment helps, but it fails. Plans are useful only while conditions remain stable. What makes Alaska distinct is not hostility. It is indifference. The environment does not oppose survival. It simply does not assist it. Every advantage must be created, maintained, and protected. Those who live and travel here learn to think in systems. Heat, water, shelter, food, and rest are treated as constants, not achievements. When one fails, the others follow. Many survival stories from Alaska begin without urgency. Travel proceeds normally. Weather appears manageable. Supplies seem adequate. Then a small change occurs. A delayed flight, a damaged tool, a river that rises overnight. The land remains unchanged. It is only the human margin that narrows. People do not enter Alaska's interior by accident. Those who travel beyond its towns usually have a reason. Work is the most common one. Bush pilots move supplies between remote settlements. Hunters and guides follow seasonal contracts. Trappers maintain lines that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Scientists conduct field research where roads do not exist. Construction crews build pipelines, radar stations, and temporary camps. Each group arrives with specific knowledge and expectations. Many are experienced outdoors. Some grew up in northern climates. Others trained deliberately for cold environments. Navigation, fire building, and basic medical skills are common. Equipment is chosen carefully. Weight matters. Redundancy matters more. There are also those drawn by solitude. Writers, photographers, and long-term homesteaders have documented attempts to live independently in the Alaskan wilderness. Some succeed for years. Others underestimate the daily cost of isolation. The land does not reward intention. It responds only to consistent preparation. Historically, Alaska has attracted people during periods of economic pressure. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, gold prospectors traveled inland with minimal support. Many followed river systems, assuming they would provide food and transport. Records from these expeditions show that most did not die dramatically. They simply ran out of options. Food shortages, illness, and exhaustion ended journeys quietly. Modern travel appears safer, but dependence on technology introduces new vulnerabilities. GPS devices fail in extreme cold. Batteries drain quickly. Aircraft are reliable, but weather grounds them without warning. Radios work only within range. Satellite phones require clear skies and functioning power sources. Training reduces risk but does not eliminate it. Survival manuals emphasize priorities: shelter, fire, water, food. These principles are accurate, but execution depends on circumstance. A broken leg changes every calculation. Wet conditions invalidate fire-starting methods. Deep snow turns short distances into hours of labor. Motivation varies, but commitment often looks the same. People pack carefully. They leave itineraries. They expect difficulty, not crisis. Most documented survival cases in Alaska involve individuals who believed they were operating within manageable risk. Background does not guarantee safety. Experienced hunters have been stranded after river crossings became impassable. Pilots with thousands of flight hours have crash-landed due to sudden weather shifts. Indigenous knowledge offers deep understanding of the land, but even it does not prevent all loss. Oral histories from Alaska Native communities include accounts of skilled travelers who disappeared during storms or spring breakups. What these people share is not recklessness. It is proximity. Alaska compresses margins quickly. A situation that would be inconvenient elsewhere becomes critical here due to distance alone. Once travel begins, retreat is not always possible. Rivers flow one direction. Snow obscures tracks. Aircraft schedules depend on conditions beyond human control. Supplies are calculated with precision, but unexpected delays accumulate. The decision to go north is usually rational. The decision to continue is often practical. The moment when those decisions can no longer be reversed is rarely dramatic. It arrives quietly, when help is no longer within reach. Alaska's survival history is not built on singular events. It is built on patterns. When incidents are examined over time, through search and rescue records, medical reports, aviation logs, and personal journals, common elements appear repeatedly. The circumstances differ. The outcomes vary. But the structure of survival remains consistent. Most documented cases do not begin with catastrophe. They begin with routine travel, a flight between villages, a hunting trip planned for a few days, a supply run along a river corridor. In many cases, the individuals involved had completed similar journeys before. Familiarity created confidence. Confidence shortened margins. One of the most frequent causes of survival situations in Alaska is weather-related delay. Aircraft are forced down by fog, snow, or sudden wind shifts. Small planes land safely but cannot take off again. In winter, engines fail to restart. In summer, soft ground traps landing gear. Pilots and passengers wait, expecting conditions to improve within hours. When they do not, survival begins by default. River travel produces a different pattern. Boats move quickly during spring melt, then become stranded as water levels drop. In autumn, early ice traps vessels mid-channel. People are left between destinations, with supplies calculated for transit rather than stasis. Travel upriver is often impossible. Overland movement requires cutting through dense brush or deep snow. Hunting and trapping incidents tend to involve separation. A person follows game farther than intended. Visibility changes. Tracks disappear. The return route is misjudged. Distances expand. By the time orientation is lost, energy has already been spent. Historical records show that panic is rarely the immediate cause of death. The land imposes slow constraints. Cold reduces dexterity. Hunger weakens judgment. Fatigue compounds errors. Survival depends less on dramatic action and more on early restraint. Those who survive longest tend to stop moving quickly. They establish a fixed point. Shelter is prioritized, even if imperfect. Fire becomes central not only for warmth but for structure. Maintaining a fire creates routine. Routine preserves cognition. Food acquisition follows predictable limits. In winter, calories are scarce. Small game is unreliable. Fishing through ice requires tools and time. Many survivors reduce intake deliberately, conserving energy rather than chasing uncertain resources. Weight loss is expected. It is monitored quietly. In summer cases, food is more available but preparation is critical. Raw consumption increases risk of illness. Berries supplement calories but cannot sustain exertion. Protein remains difficult to secure without equipment. Water is often abundant, but purification remains necessary. Cold water reduces bacterial growth but does not eliminate it. Dehydration occurs even in freezing conditions, as thirst signals weaken. Survivors who consciously regulate intake fare better. Injury changes outcomes decisively. Even minor wounds heal slowly in cold environments. Infection risk increases. Mobility loss restricts all other systems. Many fatal cases involve individuals who survived initial isolation but succumbed after injury limited their ability to maintain shelter or fire. Psychological strain appears gradually in records. Survivors report altered perception of time. Days blend. Motivation becomes mechanical. Tasks are completed without emotional engagement. This detachment is not a failure. It is adaptive. Emotion consumes energy. Those who attempt self-rescue over long distances rarely succeed unless terrain is favorable and conditions stable. Movement exposes the body to cold and increases calorie expenditure. Staying put increases the likelihood of detection by search efforts when those efforts exist. Search and rescue operations in Alaska operate under strict constraints. Aircraft coverage depends on daylight and weather. Ground teams move slowly and selectively. Many rescues occur only because survivors made themselves visible through smoke, signal panels, or contrast against snow. Not all cases end in rescue. Some are resolved through discovery years later. Campsites are found with tools arranged methodically. Fire rings remain intact. Journals, when present, often end without explanation. These records suggest endurance rather than collapse. What emerges from these documented cases is not heroism. It is discipline. Survival in Alaska is not about overcoming the environment. It is about aligning behavior with its limits. Those who live do not conquer the land. They adapt to its indifference. The point of no return in Alaska is rarely marked by a single event. It is defined instead by accumulation. A weather system settles in longer than forecast. Snow falls steadily, then thickens. Visibility reduces to a few meters. Wind flattens surface detail, removing reference points. Travel slows, then stops. What was once a delay becomes a condition. In aviation-related cases, this moment often occurs after a safe landing. The aircraft is intact. No one is injured. Supplies are present. The assumption is temporary inconvenience. Pilots wait for ceilings to lift or winds to ease. Engines are shut down to preserve fuel. Hours pass. Temperatures drop. Batteries lose charge. The margin narrows without announcement. In river and coastal travel, the shift is quieter. Ice forms earlier than expected. Water levels fall overnight. Boats rest at angles they were not designed for. Attempts to push free expend energy with no result. Equipment becomes wet. Hands lose dexterity. The option to return disappears before it is consciously acknowledged. On land, separation defines the moment. A hunter follows tracks beyond the planned radius. Terrain changes subtly. Trees close in. Snow depth increases. The return path is assumed rather than confirmed. When the mistake is realized, daylight has already declined. Orientation depends on memory rather than markers. At this stage, the environment has not become hostile. It remains unchanged. What changes is the relationship between effort and outcome. Actions no longer produce proportional results. Walking an hour no longer brings a destination closer. Waiting no longer improves conditions. Experienced individuals often recognize this transition indirectly. They stop checking the horizon for improvement. They stop adjusting plans. Instead, attention turns inward, toward resources and limits. This is the moment when survival replaces travel. Decision-making becomes conservative. Movement is minimized. Exposure is avoided even at the cost of progress. The priority shifts from reaching somewhere else to maintaining the ability to function tomorrow. Records show that those who survive longest acknowledge this transition early. They abandon original objectives without hesitation. Pride and sunk cost are set aside. The journey ends, even if the map suggests otherwise. For others, the delay in recognition proves costly. Repeated attempts to resume travel drain calories and morale. Wet clothing freezes. Equipment breaks under strain. Small injuries accumulate. When the decision to stop finally arrives, reserves are already compromised. Communication failures often coincide with this phase. Radios lose signal. Satellite devices fail due to cold or battery loss. Scheduled check-ins are missed. Those waiting elsewhere may not know whether to initiate search efforts or continue to wait. Time becomes an unreliable reference. Without routine or external cues, hours blend. Survivors rely on tasks to structure days. Fire maintenance, shelter reinforcement, equipment checks. These actions create continuity in the absence of progress. The point of no return is not dramatic. There is no single sound or sight that confirms it. It is identified only in hindsight when conditions fail to reverse and options collapse. From this moment forward, survival is no longer a contingency. It is the only remaining objective. Once movement stops, survival becomes procedural. The first task is shelter. Not permanence, but insulation from wind and moisture. In forested areas, survivors use available trees to block prevailing wind. Branches are cut close to the ground, where snow offers additional insulation. In open terrain, snow itself becomes material. Windpack drifts are shaped into walls. Improvised roofs are weighted with ice or debris. The goal is not comfort. It is temperature stability. Fire becomes central to all systems. It provides heat, light, and psychological structure. In cold conditions, firewood consumption is constant. Survivors establish collection routines early, gathering more than immediately needed. Wet wood is dried near the fire, rotated carefully to avoid extinguishing flames. Sparks are controlled. A lost fire often cannot be restarted easily. Those who survive longest rarely allow a fire to die completely. Embers are maintained through sleep cycles. In documented cases, survivors wake regularly to feed flames, even when exhausted. This discipline preserves core temperature and prevents catastrophic cooling. Water management follows. Snow is melted slowly to conserve fuel. Ice is preferred over fresh snow, as it yields more water per unit of energy. Containers are insulated to prevent refreezing. Dehydration is monitored deliberately. Thirst is not trusted as an indicator. Food acquisition becomes secondary to energy conservation. In winter, hunting is rarely efficient. Small game traps may be set if materials exist, but expectations are minimal. Fishing through ice requires tools and time that many survivors lack. As a result, caloric intake often falls far below expenditure. Those who endure accept weight loss as inevitable. Movement is reduced to essential tasks. Rest becomes strategic. Muscles are preserved through inactivity rather than exertion. Protein is prioritized when available. Fat is conserved. In summer survival cases, routines differ but discipline remains constant. Shelters focus on rain protection rather than insulation. Fire is maintained primarily for cooking and signaling. Food sources include berries, fish, and occasionally small mammals. Each carries risk. Raw consumption increases illness potential. Preparation consumes fuel and time. In both seasons, tool maintenance becomes critical. Knives are kept sharp. Fire-starting equipment is protected from moisture. Clothing is dried whenever possible. Minor repairs are completed immediately. Delays increase failure rates. Mental management is as structured as physical survival. Survivors limit forward planning. Thinking beyond immediate needs increases anxiety without improving outcomes. Instead, attention is confined to the next task. Gather wood. Melt snow. Check shelter integrity. These cycles anchor cognition. Records describe emotional flattening rather than panic. This is not resignation. It is efficiency. Emotion consumes energy and clouds judgment. Detachment allows focus to remain on systems rather than outcomes. Apex predators are treated as environmental factors, not threats. Survivors avoid storing food near shelter. Waste is managed carefully. Fires are kept visible. Noise is controlled. Encounters, when they occur, are brief and observational. Animals move on when no advantage appears. Night alters perception. Sounds carry farther. Movement outside shelter is minimized. Headlamps and torches are used sparingly to preserve batteries. Darkness enforces stillness. Days repeat with little variation. This repetition is intentional. It reduces decision fatigue, preserves energy. It increases the chance of survival over extended periods. Survival in Alaska is not sustained by optimism. It is sustained by routine. In Alaska, large predators are not an exception. They are a constant. Brown bears, black bears, wolves, and wolverines occupy overlapping territories that span hundreds of kilometers. Their presence does not announce itself daily, but signs remain visible. Tracks in snow or mud, scattered bones, partially buried food caches. These indicators shape behavior long before an animal is seen. Survivors who remain stationary learn quickly that avoidance is more effective than defense. Predators conserve energy. They assess risk carefully. A human presence that appears alert, noisy, or unpredictable is rarely worth engagement. The objective is not to intimidate, but to avoid signaling vulnerability. Food management is the primary concern. Any edible material attracts attention. Cooking areas are separated from sleeping areas whenever terrain allows. Food is suspended from trees or placed downwind. Waste is buried or burned completely. These actions reduce scent but do not eliminate it. They delay detection rather than prevent it. Fire plays a central role in predator deterrence. Bears, in particular, avoid open flame and human-associated smells. Survivors maintain visible fires even when fuel is limited. Smoke becomes a barrier as much as a signal. In documented cases, individuals who allowed fires to go out at night reported increased animal activity nearby. Wolves behave differently. They observe from distance. They track movement patterns. They rarely approach closely unless food is present or an individual appears injured. Encounters described in records are silent and brief. Wolves remain at the edge of visibility, then disappear. Moose, while not predators, present equal risk. They are unpredictable and aggressive when threatened, particularly during winter or calving seasons. Survivors avoid riverbanks and dense brush where moose movement is common. Noise is used to announce presence when visibility is limited. The psychological impact of coexisting with large animals accumulates gradually. Sounds at night take on significance. Wind moving through branches is reinterpreted. Survivors learn to distinguish between environmental noise and deliberate movement. This awareness becomes automatic. Those who survive long periods do not attempt to dominate territory. They remain temporary. Camps are kept minimal. Visual and scent footprints are reduced. The goal is to pass unnoticed rather than to claim space. Weapons, when present, are rarely used. Firearms require ammunition conservation and accurate assessment. Discharging a weapon introduces risk of injury and attracts attention from both animals and humans. Most documented encounters resolve without confrontation. In cases where predators investigate camps, survivors respond with measured actions. Increased fire intensity, controlled noise, standing ground without pursuit, retreat into shelter only when necessary. Panic responses correlate strongly with injury. Over time, animals adjust to presence patterns. If no reward appears, interest declines. Survivors who maintain consistent routines reduce the likelihood of repeated visits. Living beside apex predators reinforces a fundamental principle of Alaskan survival. Humans are not central. They are temporary participants in an existing system. Survival depends on minimizing disruption rather than asserting control. The land does not offer protection. Neither do its animals seek conflict. Coexistence, when managed deliberately, becomes another routine. Even with routine firmly established, survival in Alaska is taxing. The human body and mind erode slowly, without dramatic events, but with relentless consistency. Physical decline is inevitable. Cold and exertion consume calories faster than they can be replenished. In winter, even minimal movement burns significant energy. Hands, feet, and face are vulnerable to frostbite despite clothing. Small injuries, scrapes, blisters, or cuts worsen as circulation slows. Infections develop quickly. Muscles weaken from both overuse and inactivity. Energy reserves shrink. Fatigue becomes constant rather than episodic. Hydration remains critical but often overlooked. Melted snow provides water, yet it must be managed carefully to avoid overexertion. Ice can be abundant but requires energy to convert into consumable form. The body's signals become unreliable. Thirst may diminish even as dehydration progresses. Survivors monitor intake deliberately, calculating each sip against energy expenditure. Nutrition is equally constrained. Hunting opportunities are inconsistent. Fishing may fail due to ice thickness, low population, or poor technique. Edible plants are seasonal and localized. Many survivors subsist on minimal calories, prioritizing protein and fat when possible. Weight loss is predictable. Long-term starvation is rarely sudden. It accumulates silently, weakening coordination and immune response. Sleep, when achieved, is shallow and fragmented. Shelter may provide insulation but rarely eliminates environmental stressors. Temperature fluctuations disrupt cycles. Noise from wind, ice, and distant animals interrupts rest. Over time, fatigue compounds cognitive decline. Memory blurs. Time perception distorts. Days merge. Hours feel like minutes, minutes like hours. Mental strain parallels physical deterioration. Isolation reduces social feedback, which humans rely on for orientation and emotional regulation. Survivors report monotony, repetition, and an emerging sense of timelessness. Tasks that were once routine become tedious yet necessary. Mental energy is expended on sustaining focus rather than planning. Anxiety arises gradually. The human mind catalogs risk continuously. Every sound is evaluated. Every shadow is interpreted. While predators are present intermittently, the real pressure comes from uncertainty. Will supplies last? Will weather improve? Will the body endure another day? These questions have no immediate answers, and constant rumination depletes willpower. Decision-making slows. Choices that were once straightforward, whether to move, gather fuel, or forage, require deliberate thought. Errors have magnified consequences. Small miscalculations in route, effort, or exposure now carry higher risk than they did at the journey's start. Time becomes a secondary threat. Days blend into nights, and weeks pass without clear markers. Sunlight patterns in extreme latitudes are inconsistent. Survivors track days through repetitive actions. Maintenance of fire, shelter inspection, water collection. These tasks structure reality and maintain a sense of continuity, yet they cannot prevent the erosion of physical and mental capacity. Recorded cases reveal the compounding effect of stress. Individuals who were initially competent, cautious, and well-prepared gradually lose coordination, reduce activity, and experience cognitive lapses. Fatigue amplifies every error. Illness or injury compounds the effect. Recovery becomes slower. Minor setbacks that would have been manageable early in isolation grow into critical impediments. Isolation itself intensifies strain. Without confirmation of rescue, hope becomes abstract. Psychological pressure peaks quietly but consistently. Motivation relies on discipline rather than optimism. Actions are maintained as a routine rather than a choice. Any deviation may accelerate decline. Death or severe injury often occurs not from a single dramatic incident but from cumulative failure. Fatigue, starvation, exposure, or infection compounds until the body can no longer function. Survivors who endure are those who manage energy, attention, and morale with meticulous care. In Alaska, time itself is an opponent. It stretches and compresses perception, eroding strength slowly, consistently, and silently. The struggle is not against storms or predators alone. It is against entropy, the gradual decline of body and mind in an environment indifferent to survival. After weeks or months in isolation, the outcome becomes clear. Either rescue occurs or the wilderness dictates the final measure. Rescue in Alaska is methodical, constrained by conditions. Aircraft can reach remote locations only when weather and visibility allow. Rivers or ice corridors must be navigable. Search teams rely on signals, tracks, and knowledge of habitual routes. Many survivors increase visibility deliberately, fires, reflective surfaces, or arranged markers, to maximize the chance of detection. Even then, recovery is not immediate. It is calculated and deliberate. When rescue is possible, it is neither sudden nor dramatic. A bush pilot approaches slowly, landing where conditions permit. The individual is located, assessed for injuries, and transported to safety. The landscape remains unchanged. Life in civilization resumes quietly, often with medical attention and rest as the first priorities. Relief is practical, not emotional. The wilderness continues without recognition. When rescue does not occur, survival concludes differently. Physical decline reaches a point where the body can no longer sustain essential functions. Frostbite advances, dehydration progresses, and caloric reserves are exhausted. Illness or minor injuries compound the decline. In historical cases, these endings are rarely sudden or chaotic. They are measured, gradual, and unobserved. The wilderness absorbs the absence silently. Journals, equipment, or campsites often remain as records. Arrangements of tools, fire rings, or personal items indicate effort and organization. Food stores, carefully maintained, suggest calculated routines. These remnants provide insight into methodical strategies and endurance. They confirm that survival was attempted with discipline, even when the outcome was fatal. In cases of extended isolation, survivors sometimes emerge weakened, emaciated, or injured. Medical care is necessary, yet recovery is slow and unceremonious. The psychological impact is noted, but it is neither dramatized nor overstated. Resilience is evident in physical survival, not in celebratory narrative. Death, when it occurs, does not attract attention in the environment. Predators may investigate, but they are opportunistic rather than deliberate. Snow covers tracks. Rivers wash away disturbances. The land does not mourn, does not celebrate. It simply continues. Silence is total, uninterrupted, and permanent. The distinction between survival and silence lies in human presence. Survival requires continuous action, careful management of resources, and adaptation to circumstance. Silence is the cessation of those actions, whether due to external limitation or internal depletion. Both are observed outcomes of the same environment, indifferent, vast, and exacting. By the time help arrives or does not, the individual has already passed the most critical threshold. The wilderness has defined the boundary. Options have been exhausted. Effort has either preserved life or reached its natural limit. In Alaska, the conclusion of a survival story is rarely climactic. It is quiet, measured, complete. Survival in Alaska leaves no illusions. It demonstrates the limits of human endurance, the precision required for prolonged isolation, and the subtlety with which nature imposes constraints. The land does not punish dramatically. It corrects slowly. Mistakes are absorbed at first, then magnified until they become irreversible. Success is rarely heroic. It is methodical, quiet, and unobserved. Historical records and documented accounts show consistent patterns. Preparation, discipline, and routine determine outcomes more than strength or daring. Food, water, shelter, and fire are not conveniences. They are imperatives. Skill alone does not ensure survival. Attention to detail, adaptability, and restraint do. Those who last longest do so by minimizing risk, conserving energy, and observing the environment meticulously. Encounters with apex predators illustrate another lesson. Dominance is irrelevant. Survival is coexistence. Bears, wolves, and moose move through the territory without seeking confrontation, and humans endure by respecting their patterns and boundaries. Alaska teaches that awareness and subtle adaptation outweigh aggression and force. Physical and mental limits are tested continuously. Fatigue accumulates, hunger persists, and isolation challenges cognition. Time itself becomes a variable to manage. Survivors learn to structure days through repetitive, disciplined actions. Routine becomes a mechanism for preserving both body and mind. Alaska also emphasizes the indifference of nature. Weather shifts, rivers rise, and ice changes without concern for human presence. Rescue is possible but never guaranteed. The wilderness does not reward intent. It responds only to alignment with its conditions. Those who are prepared may endure. Those who are not may disappear quietly, leaving traces for future observers. Ultimately, the lessons extend beyond the individual. Historical documentation informs modern travel, informs safety protocols, and enriches understanding of human-environment interaction. Alaska is a benchmark of endurance, an environment that magnifies both error and care. Its stories are not tales of heroism, but records of adaptation. The quiet of the land remains unchanged after each story concludes. Snow drifts, rivers flow, wind sweeps across open plains. Animals continue their cycles. The environment does not acknowledge human survival or loss. It simply continues. In the stillness of Alaska, one sees that human presence is temporary, measured by preparation, resilience, and respect for natural limits. Here, survival is not an achievement celebrated. It is a passage observed. It is a record left quietly in the silence of the North.